Sheila.
So just to kind of get us started, so I want us to do just an icebreaker. I want everybody to go ahead, say their name, their organization, and maybe one thing they're working on, KM, or just maybe something interesting they read recently about KM that they're excited about. So I'll start. I'm Sheila Jackson. I'm a Senior Knowledge Management Specialist with Core Group working on the TOPS program. And what I am currently working on is the TOPS FSN Network Knowledge Sharing Meeting, which will happen at the end of January. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the meeting. Adrian?
Adrian again, and I'm supporting Sheila for the knowledge sharing meeting this coming January, and I actually just got back. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Yeah, it's a little secret, but we just got back from a trip in Uganda, documenting lessons learned and best practices from a spring nutrition project. That's all I can say for that for now.
Hi everyone, I'm Yemisi, supporting Adrian and Sheila with knowledge management within TOPS and just finding a space in my new role, I think.
Great. All right, so I'll go down the list here. Cheryl. Cheryl, are you there? Cheryl, try again. We just activated the mic. Sorry about that. Nope. Okay. All right. So, Cheryl, would be okay if you just really quickly typed it into the chat box and then I can read it out to everybody? Sorry about that. Interesting KRO from HBR. Encourage employees to share what they know. Yes, I love reading the HBR. Thank you, Cheryl. Definitely get a look into that. How about Emily, Julie, and Corrine, I believe? So Emily is the Knowledge Management for Care, Foods, and Nutrition Security team. Thank you for coming today, Emily. And just a little plug, Emily will be one of the presenters at the Knowledge Sharing meeting. So once again, we'll talk about that. And Corrine, who's the Learning Advisor at USA Center for Resilience, and Julie McCarthy, who's with BFS. And she recently used the 2510 brainstorming activity that she learned from the facilitation workshop. All right, Julie, give it up for Julie. The class that she teaches. Students had to come up with one bold idea for improving the food system at their university. And Emily talks about an interesting article from TOPS that was on the FSN network. All right, Emily, okay, she's reading our stuff. I love it. So we'll all look at that. In fact, in the follow-up email, the articles that both Cheryl and Emily recommended will include the links for those. So you can go ahead in your quote-unquote free time, read those. So, okay, great. All right, well, thank you all for sharing. Sorry about the audio, but as you know, we can always find a separate way to do things. So also I wanted to mention that Lauren Jessup with Save the Children, also the TOPS program, she is helping us taking notes. She's part of the team. And real quickly here.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to walk you through how to activate your mics really quickly. It's a little bit different than how we normally do it. So next to the audio button, the speaker, you should see something that resembles a phone. And if you click on that, a box will pop up and it will give you two options: connect through your phone or through your computer. So if you would like to activate your mics, you can activate them that way. Select the computer mic and connect. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, so while we're kind of working with that, what I want to do is get into kind of the meat of today's meeting. And I'm very excited for the fact is, you guys may remember over the summer the KM Task Force organized a facilitation series. We did 2 workshops for in-person facilitation. Then we did 2 virtual meetings, one on how to facilitate a virtual meeting and another one on how to facilitate hybrid meetings, which is a combination of in-person and virtual facilitation, virtual meetings, excuse me. And these were very well received. And what I'm excited about, Lynette Friedman, who some of you may know, and definitely here at TOPS we know and love, she's an independent consultant, and so she actually developed the facilitation in-person workshop, and then she put together a curriculum for us, and that is what we are going to hear her talk about, and we're considering renewing this. We're recommending the tool. And there's Lynette. Oh, that's a great picture of you, Lynette. And so I want you, as we're listening to Lynette, how we recommend a tool in the KM Task Force is we base it on 4 criteria. Easy to use, user-friendly, found useful and effective, successfully applied in the appropriate context, and addresses a need or gap in the practitioner community. So I'm going to turn this over to Lynette, and please remember that once Lynette is through the presentation, you'll be able to engage with her in a little Q&A to ask a little bit more information you may have on the resource. Okay? So Lynette, you want to take it away?
Yep, thank you. Can you hear me before I keep talking? Let me go ahead and check that. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, let me go ahead and give a quick overview of the curriculum. Go ahead and start that off. I think you all got the link to this document. There were 3 workshops that were conducted. The first one was a workshop requested by a core group for the spring meeting. And Lonnie Marquez and I worked together on that, and it was really geared predominantly towards core working group chairs, but also a broader audience. And then after that workshop, Sheila had asked me to revise this for a TOPS audience. And so the focus that really changed for these mini workshops was to spend more time kind of debriefing. So in addition to doing some exercises and building up a toolkit, to be able to spend some more time debriefing around the different exercises used, how people could use those, how they could adapt them, be able to have a lot of that discussion as part of the workshop. And then after the first one, we then made some additional changes. Participants asked for more time where they could be able to do some role plays and try out some of the different techniques. And so this guide represents the curriculum for that first workshop, and then how that was changed for the second one with TOPS. The overall focus, obviously you could spend a week doing a facilitation training with a lot of in-depth time for practicing different things. This is a 3.5-hour workshop, so it's really designed as a mini workshop that kind of builds a toolkit, gives people some different tools that they can use, and then be able to adapt those as they'd like. So the overall focus, there's a needs assessment done ahead of time that was extremely helpful. It asked people kind of what they were most struggling with, what they most wanted to learn. A lot of that was good to kind of come prepared for the workshop of where the specific audience was coming from, but also later on we got into the speed consulting. It provided the facilitator with kind of some things in your back pocket in case nobody volunteers, of things that are actually important and interesting to the participants. So the first half of the session was focused on actually using some different exercises around generating ideas, organizing thinking, making decisions, and set that up as kind of a series of an overall exercise that kind of built on itself and used a number of different techniques. So we used that both to accomplish something in and of itself with the questions that were asked, but then also really as a way to demonstrate these different techniques that people could use in any environment where they were facilitating. So the bullet point here gives a couple different items, a couple of the different exercises that were incorporated into that. And then the curriculum provides facilitation notes to help the facilitator pull out some of those key points, some of those ideas, be able to start the discussion with participants about what exercises they saw, how they could use those, what other things they may have used to accomplish the same objective. And then the second half of the workshop is focused on techniques for managing meetings. And a major part of that is the speed consulting, which I think worked really well. That, along with all the exercises, was something that both provided people with an exercise in and of themselves to accomplish something related to challenges they were having with managing meetings, but also was used as a way to model a speed consulting technique that could be used in any experience, any meeting that people were working with where that would be appropriate. And so each of these also has a debriefing section to kind of talk through what people learned, how they could use it, all of that type of thing. And then the second part is what changed between Workshop 1 and Workshop 2. So the first one, at this point, had used the crowdsourcing, 2510. And then we got some feedback that people really wanted to have more smaller opportunities to try things and do some role plays, and that's where the rest of these came out. So using the icebreakers is an opportunity to talk about icebreakers, but also demonstrate the technique of voting along a line and bringing out discussion along that. And then the next couple were role plays. And in the curriculum documents each of these. In the actual workshop, I ended up only using the first one. It was one of those things that is kind of dynamic in a workshop. The other two ended up really kind of being covered through issues people brought up in the speed consulting or conversations that had already taken place. And so those are, all three of those are written up as ways that someone facilitating this workshop could be able to pick and choose what was appropriate. And if something has already been covered, that then gives more time to the other challenges and the discussion there around issues that people want to bring up. And then the conclusion and evaluation is yet again accomplishing two things, evaluating the workshop, of course, but also modeling a plus delta technique of finding out what was good, what people would like to see changed. And across the whole workshop, I think one of the things that worked well was kind of constantly stopping and kind of talking about what was going on, what were the thoughts behind things that were said or techniques that were used, what was that thought process, what were some of the purposes of doing things. And so kind of across the board, incorporating that into the workshop. And then the curriculum also includes several different handouts on the techniques and tips. So that is a really quick overview to the curriculum. And let me kind of open the floor at this point for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Lynette. First thing I want to know, does anybody have a question right off the bat with Lynette? Kathy, Kareem, sorry, is typing. See what she's typing on. She has how many days for the workshop?
1 day, 3.5 hours. So it's really a mini workshop.
She's now typing. Well, now while we're waiting for Yejin to type in hers, I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I think this was so successful is that, and you mentioned this before you did the workshop, you kind of surveyed all the participants. Could you talk about how that went and how that would kind of, you could incorporate what the responses are into kind of a template of a curriculum like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was a really helpful part. What we did was just send a simple question to everybody who had signed up, and I think the text for that is in the curriculum. just asking them kind of, I think it was something to the effect of what were the key challenges, what were some things you were really wanting to get out of the workshop, things that you were currently challenged by. So it was really helpful for me as a facilitator to have that in the back of my mind. I could bring that up both in the introduction as well as in some of the discussion around knowing what people were really struggling with, where to focus more time. But then also when we got to the speed consulting, we asked people to volunteer their different problems, and people did volunteer, so it wasn't an issue. But I also had those written down with me just in case there was no one brave enough to volunteer. I'd be able to bring something up that was really real and pertinent as opposed to something more generic. So I see 2 questions.
All right, then, please go ahead.
I was just going to look at the question of what are the usual participants' audience. The one we did for the original one with CORE was predominantly working group chairs, but then it was also open to any other people who were interested in coming. And then the TOPS one as well, I think, was advertised on the TOPS listserv. And the people who came were generally people who were either involved in facilitating meetings, and it could just be a staff meeting, it could be a field workshop. Generally, people had at least a little bit of facilitation experience, so they had done some meetings and maybe were struggling with some things. We're looking for new techniques to try out. We're looking for some other experiences. But I think we also had 1 or 2 people who had never done any facilitating who were part of that workshop. Is it best delivered by a professional facilitator? I think my personal opinion is that it's going to be most effective done by somebody who's comfortable with facilitation. I tried to incorporate a lot of comments, kind of discussion points, things to bring up. But I think if you know what you're training on and if you're working with it, you're going to be much more comfortable with it. You're going to be able to answer people's questions. I think someone could do it without the experience and kind of work through the different exercises. But I think the training experience is going to be better coming from someone who's really comfortable with it. No, definitely not led by me. I think it could be led by anybody who's comfortable facilitating, who can kind of answer the questions as they're coming up.
Yeah, I'd like to address that. Yeah, in no way, Julie, did we do this specifically just by Lynette. Our whole objection was this is so that anybody could go ahead and pick this up and go ahead and teach this workshop. From my standpoint, just to give you a little background on, I was at the original one that Lynette did for the core group working chairs, and as soon as it was over, I went up to Lynette and I'm like, oh, please, do this for the KM task force. Do this for us because, I had heard that, facilitation skills, that was something people needed, more experience in using different techniques and everything. And, the whole idea was eventually it was kind of, and plus this would be kind of like a train the trainer as far as you got used to this, you could use this curriculum, you could go ahead and repeat it so we could train people to be more, have better facilitation skills. So,
yeah,
follow up.
I just want to follow up on Julie's comment. Absolutely, anyone can use it, and also along your comment of molding it to your needs, I think you could easily take parts of it. If you just had an hour, you could take one piece of it and be able to do that. Or if there was one part of it that was more relevant to your group, you could easily just take that piece. You could do just the icebreakers and have a 20-minute section and just kind of pick and choose little pieces of it with no problem. Corinne's question, is there enough time for participants to practice within the workshop, and what was the group size? Absolutely. The first part of it is really set up to kind of work through some exercises and practice them and get the feeling more as participants and then talk it through. And then the second part is more an opportunity to kind of play the facilitator and be able to break someone off in a meeting when they're running on, that type of thing. And so 3.5 hours is a short time, but the whole thing is designed to be extremely participatory. We set up the room with just chairs around in a circle with no desks. There's a lot of moving around. There's a lot of opportunity to interact with people. I'm really glad you brought up the group size. That's something I forgot to say. I think we've got written in there that the ideal is about 17 to 20, and I think both the minimum and the maximum are important in that. You don't want it too big or you won't be able to really have a discussion, but at least a minimum size I think is really good also to bring in different perspectives, to be able to break the group up into different numbers and different dynamics. And I think I think that 17 to 20-ish is a good ballpark. Yeah, I think you could use...
Lynette, do you want to keep going?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, no, I was just reading Julie's comment. I do feel like it would be good to have another add-on option where people can practice facilitating some of the exercises themselves. So I think you kind of answered that, incorporated into the curriculum. There is time, but there's always ways you can make it longer and give people more time to go ahead, and practice. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've got the additional time to practice things more, I think that's much better.
And then Cheryl has a question.
Yeah, I think the people who, as a trainer, someone who's facilitated before, I think is an important prereq. For participants, I think it could be either. I think it helps to have at least some people who have done some facilitating, even if it's just, facilitating a staff meeting. Because especially when it comes to the speed consulting, coming with some of the challenges or having tried it and struggled with some things is helpful in the whole group. But there can easily be a mix, and I think in both of the sessions we did, we had a good mix of people with more and less experience that led to a good discussion and a lot of good questions.
Yeah, and I think to Cheryl's point, she's asking if there's something we would recommend for people that haven't facilitated before. Lynette, you kind of mentioned that most people did have a little bit of facilitation. Mm-hmm. So if I'm understanding Cheryl right, it's a very basic thing to kind of introduce them. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure what I would say. We borrowed heavily from various different, Lynette borrowed heavily from other techniques such as liberating structures. And things of that nature. And I really don't, with the exception of putting them in some sort of user group or coming to this, I don't know anything that could be a little bit more bare bones or a little bit more basic. Do you, Lynette?
Not really. I mean, there's a number of different books out there on facilitation. I think a lot of it, honestly, is a lot of trial and error. It's just kind of getting out there and trying it and seeing what works. There's a lot of good books on different techniques, but a lot of the field just comes from practice.
And if I could just kind of add, one thing that really I think has always helped all facilitators is to get feedback from other people. So if you go up there and you facilitate, asking them to get some honest feedback, how did I do? Did this work? This didn't work? Everything like that. Mm-hmm. Different feedback like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in the curriculum we have a little bit of kind of the fishbowl techniques at the end for like kind of mini exercises in kind of dealing with difficult participants. So that's an opportunity for some of that feedback. But I agree that kind of even when you're doing a meeting, getting some feedback from someone afterwards on what worked or what could have been done differently is really helpful.
And Corinne asked if there are plans for another iteration of the training in this coming year. Do you mean having another workshop like we did, or are you thinking like advanced facilitation? What were you thinking, Corinne? For a second, okay. another one like this, we can look into doing it. We can look into doing it if there's still interest in people attending this. It's definitely doing this. I know a lot of people like this, so I'm assuming that you're interested, Green. Yes? Okay. I think that's something, Lynette and I can talk about maybe doing another one. So any other questions about the tool? So hold on, we got Green typing it again. Okay, so I really want to thank Lynette for taking this time to go over the tool with us. We really appreciate it, Lynette, and there's interest in having another workshop, so we'll talk later.
Okay, it's good joining you all.
Doing that. What?
I said good joining you all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay, and so I just want to remind everybody of how we kind of do the recommendation process. That after this, we always send our wrap-up emails. There will be a link to the tool. Adrienne will also, she already has the link up there to the KM2 recommendation survey. The survey is designed to be short and sweet, and literally you're just going to go ahead and vote on the 4 criteria for recommending a tool. 1, is it easy to use? 2, can it be successfully applied in appropriate context? 3, does it address the need or a gap in the practitioner community? What did I think? Oh, and is it found useful and effective? So very short and sweet, so I hope you will all vote and let your voice be heard, and then we'll let you know whether or not this has been recommended by the KM Task Force. Do want to let you know that deadline for voting will be December 18th. We will make sure that we send you out a reminder, but you go ahead and do it real quickly so we can go ahead and get it in there. So thank you very much. This is very exciting. To date, the KM Task Force has recommended 3 tools, all on the FSN Network website. So if we decide to do a 4th one, if we decide to recommend this one, it will be number 4. Okay? Any questions about the whole recommendation voting process? Okay. All right. So all clear. Thanks, Yejin. I appreciate that, Yejin. Okay. So the next thing that we want to go for is, you may remember a while back, we worked on a mapping project, and basically this was kind of a way of the Knowledge Management Task Force, us getting to know each other and finding out what each other did, and what are some things maybe we could address as a task force. And so right now, Adrienne has the task force up, and so we're just going to kind of go over it very quickly. The next slide shows us the technical areas that we all work in. As you can see, most of us work in food security, which makes sense, but there's other things that are other cross-technical areas that we all work in too. But the big thing is we all work in KM. So the next slide. Okay, and if we have internally or focused roles, I actually thought that this was very interesting in the fact that a lot of people were half and half. And I think that's very interesting as far as KM goes. When they're working on it, it's not just for their organizations, but they're also working for things externally too. Okay, the next one. And number of KM staff, actually I was pleasantly surprised. We have more people than we think, so that's always good, but there is a definite difference on whether they're 100% or kind of, how much time they actually do given KM. Okay. And then also other communities of practice, we actually are really out there on what we work on. Obviously the biggest one is KM for Dev, but we also do have some in the Ag to Nuts, KMA, APQC, and then a number of other ones, which was nice to see. So we're really kind of a diverse group. And so tools and activities we use, this is really where I kind of wanted to get to the crux of this. And I know it's not very easy to see on here, but just to go over a little bit, ones that we use, the biggest ones we use is document repositories, which I think makes sense as far as NGOs, the government, we all produce a lot of reports and everything, so having a robust repository makes sense. Also, another thing that kind of stood out to me is we have a lot of communities of practice, and the reason why that really stood out to me is there's a lot of communities of practice, but there's always been a little bit of tension and frustration as how do we kind of keep communities of practice going. But they are very prevalent in their using, so it is a powerful tool that we're all using, but sometimes there's just a little bit of a struggle there. And another thing that kind of warmed the cockles of my heart was how we do a lot of knowledge sharing events, both in person, virtually, and hybrid. So that's definitely, something that we're all aware of and doing. But if we go to the next slide, what I think was really interesting is, and the tools and activities we use, and the tools and activities we want to learn about, a lot, with the exception of gamification, it's a lot of the same thing, communities of practice, after action reports, different things of, what were some of the other ones, sorry, databases or information systems, which we could put the document repositories on there, and then one-on-one knowledge exchange, which is mentoring and practicing. So I want people to kind of jump in here, but when I think about these things and we're using them but we want to learn about them, immediately to me that seems like there's a definite opportunity to share what we're doing and kind of getting ideas of what other people are doing, so we can kind of take that and either borrow that to kind of improve on the techniques we're using, or just to kind of get an idea of what people are doing, so we can employ that in a different kind of context. So I don't know if we can get the mics working yet, but right here from Yejing, gamification, we tried it a few times and had fun. Though for us to learn deeper, it might not hurt to invite someone who's in marketing and learn from them. They use this approach a lot. That's interesting, Yejing, because gamification is something I'm very interested in. I've had a really difficult time trying to find someone to speak on the topic. And also, I think there's also kind of this interesting intersection between gamification versus incentivizing. I think sometimes those lines blur. But I would invite anyone, I think that's definitely something we're all trying to learn about. If, Yejing, you would be willing to kind of share some of what you did a little bit, or if you knew someone who could talk about it, I think that's something that we're looking for. Anybody have any suggestions for that?
We can try the mic.
We can try the mics. If you want to go ahead, and Adrienne, do you want to talk a little bit about how they use the mic?
Right. Thanks, Sheila. So if everyone can just look up in the upper part of their screen, there should be you should be able to see the mic icon next to the audio icon. Can everyone see that?
And go ahead.
And yes, so then go ahead and click on that and it should turn green.
Can you hear me?
I think is that you or is that Julie?
Yes, it's me.
Corinne, is that you?
It's Corinne. Yes?
Yes. Did you have something you wanted to say?
No?
Okay.
I just hear it. I just play the mic.
Julie, what about you? There's a gamification course on Coursera right now. Oh, I didn't know that. We'll include that link in our follow-up email. That might be fine to get us some ideas as far as that goes. What about looking into other things such as the after-action reports? What do you guys in conducting those. Looks like registration closes in 2 days. I took a version of it 2 years ago, and it was great. Awesome. Well, if you're definitely looking at, we'll do that. That would be interesting for all of us to do. Preference Accenture has done a lot. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Would you know, Cheryl, do you know perhaps anyone at Accenture who might be willing to talk to us? Come in and kind of give a little bit on it. Another thing I want to read, as far as the after action report, the folks I do know have left. That's a problem. You know, one of the other things I want to kind of leave open, if any of you are willing to share what you've learned through these courses and through your work, and you want to go ahead and give a presentation, I think we would all benefit from that type of knowledge sharing. And as far as the after-action reviews, can anybody kind of envision very quickly how we would tackle that as a group? Share. I'll check with it. Sarah, I'm assuming you're talking about Sarah Kraft from across Beijing? Yes. Okay. Yeah, she's always a very good resource. I think one of the things this might be difficult to do in a chat box, but besides these accepted, what about gamification or after-action reports or any of these other tools, communities of practice, one-on-one knowledge exchange, what do you want to explore within them? Are there certain things that come to mind?
Hi, this is Cheryl. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can, Cheryl.
Okay. So I know what I've been struggling with, at least internally, especially for things like AARs, is not like the documentation side or facilitating one, but how do you actually like create a process so people are referencing kind of the outcomes and kind of institutionalizing it. So I don't know if people have had experience kind of creating a system or a systematic way to do that for AARs and others, but I'd be interested in hearing people's experience with that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm trying to think. There was someone at KM World, name escapes me, and he brought that up too. I think actually it might have been Stan Garfield, but I'll have to double check, on saying that actually kind of AAR and those things kind of referencing the outcomes and institutionalized. You have to be careful with that because you don't want like this huge database of AAR, so that it really does come from after you do an after-action report, how do you kind of extract the relevant information and then kind of almost immediately apply it so it is institutionalized. Does that kind of make sense for what you're thinking, Cheryl?
Yeah, and I think it would help to contextualize it like within our organizations, because I know they're all different, but we're probably kind of in similar situations. So if someone had an experience that they'd be willing to share on what's worked for their organization.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Cheryl, but could you talk a little bit how you guys are using AAR now?
So we're using it, I mean, I know for our proposals, and I'm sure a lot of organizations, it is actually built into the proposal process. And we're starting to do it for kind of deployments and some other, even if we had someone who did like a lessons learned debrief after an experience with an institution. They actually did a course for an institution, and there were just a lot of process things that they wanted to improve upon. But we haven't gone to the point of creating like a database yet or thinking through that. So I'd just be interested to know like how are others, like are you creating a database? And if you are, how are you kind of driving people to use it? Or if you're not creating a database, how are you ensuring that things are getting, like you said, like kind of immediately addressed.
I think that's interesting, and actually I got this, I'll just share my little experience. I'm a big proponent of doing after-action reports, and one of the things, I was always one of those people who thought that it was another report to write, so I didn't want to do it. And then actually Julie, Zachary Buckhay was talking about how AgriLinks used to have their chats, their Twitter chats, and they would immediately do it afterwards and just talk about it. And for me, that was like this huge relief and watershed moment. At that point, I loved AARs. I have never written a word down, and I know that's probably not good. Well, I have done some writing, I'll be honest with that, but a lot of them are just very informal, and it's really helped to kind of improve things, but it also made them not as laborious, and so is much more willing to do them. So Julie, I see you typing. Do you remember this? Or do you guys probably still do, knowing Zachary. Like the informal linearity also prevents getting about the details. Yeah, I find that too. And also, like for us, we find out one of the things when we had hybrid events, very quickly during, I remember one after-action board having Mrs. Patrick Coonan, he very quickly let me know that the icebreaker that I was doing with people in the room was not translating to people online. That was something we very quickly learned and were able to modify. Some of these other ones, talking about, one of the things I do want to kind of talk about is one thing with database or information systems, and we have talked about Access, Excel, Salesforce with some of the ones. Can anyone, I'm not quite sure how to tackle that one, because I don't think we're talking about just using the software. I think we're thinking about talking about using it kind of in a KM context. Anyone have anything like that? I like that, Yejing, how you do that, because it's easier to sell under the budget line for M&E. Without getting anything proprietary there, and if this is uncomfortable, I think, why is it easier to get under the M&E versus the KM budget line? I'm glad they're just, and I'm sure you are glad it's just happening, but I'm just kind of curious as to why that is. So, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead and sort out. Once again, also feel free to unmute your microphone if you want to do that. Use the chat box. Systems they are using, and if they are actually happy with them. Yeah, I'm reading Emily's comment there, and I think that's very, who think their systems are working. Yeah, I think that's actually very helpful, because I think a lot of us, we know that especially one of the things you have to do, if you don't build the website, your program or your project doesn't exist. Or a lot of times with KM being tied to IT, but we build these things and they're not always being used. And so I think maybe a deeper dive into that would be interesting. Am I understanding you right? Without too much extra money. I like that. Yeah, we're just going to do it regardless if we have money or not. But actually, Emily, just kind of, I want to continue talking about this, but I want to let you know one of the sessions that we have planned for the knowledge sharing meeting is actually we're working on something on kind of community engagement and sustainability. And one part of that is going to be using at different techniques and systems that two organizations are working, and kind of looking them in the context. Why is it working in that context? Why, kind of a compare and contrast if you're using a similar thing at a different organization. why isn't working, but more importantly, what does that mean for sustainability? So that's one thing we're going to try to dive into in that, but I think also that it's definitely what you raised is definitely part of a much bigger conversation that we can have around it. And I think one of the things that I see us doing is possibly getting a few of you together and wondering if you would kind of share what you're working on, and then we kind of, as a group, look into it and talk about it and answer some of these questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can, Emily.
Excellent. So I think I was just having a conversation internally about whether or not we were going to try to adapt a different software platform for one piece of what we were doing. And I think the conversation isn't so much about is Access better than Salesforce, but about what are things we do that make them work and what are things we do that make them not work. And then most of the platforms are in some ways interchangeable. But as long as we stay stuck on which software we're using, it's hard to have a real conversation about that.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's kind of a common problem. I remember in a previous position I had, when we asked people, what do you want to be able to better share information and knowledge, they said they wanted Facebook. And which is a legitimate answer, but it was more kind of, you need a deeper dive. What in Facebook does would you work and everything? So, and I like that. Well, it's not really looking at the software or the tool. Like you said, we get stuck on that, but really, what do they do? What kind of environment do they create, or options do they have to really get people to kind of engage with each other? So these are some really great ideas, and definitely I want to look into some of these a little bit more. And if you guys have more suggestions, please let me know. And also, if you're willing to share, you don't have to do a big formal presentation. You can just kind of talk about it. If you want to do some, a little bit more of a formal presentation, we can always go that way. It's really kind of, I want this group really, for us to really just talk to each other and share information. So, don't think you have to do a big PowerPoint. If you just want to get on here and talk, that's cool too. Okay. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is I want to talk about the two things we have coming up, two things that I'm very excited about. First, as you guys know, for a long time, and this came from the task force, was to have some sort of workshop or some sort of training, I should say, on how to develop a KM strategy, because it's something that when we all get put into KM positions, we're asked to do, and none of us really know how to do it. And the KM, what we've also found is there's really nothing out there for how to do it so much in an international development context. So we have hired a consultant to go ahead and develop this for us. He has experience in creating strategies and implementing them. And he has been reaching out to some of the task force members. One thing, his name's Pete Cranston, and him and I were very passionate about this idea came from the task force. So I want to make sure that whatever end product we come up for really meets your guys' needs. So he is reaching out to some of you to really help develop the content for this. And also, more exciting, we're going to come up with kind of a guide to do this that will come out of the workshop. So we'll be looking at doing that. We're on track to have that done in March. So knock on wood, that will happen in March. It will be a 3-day workshop. And there will only be about 20 or 21 participants at the most. And KM task force members do get first shot. So we will be advertising it to you guys, and the first 20 and 21 people to sign up will get to come. I will let you know there will be a charge for this. It'll be a very nominal fee, but just to kind of help cover costs, because each day there'll be breakfast, there'll be lunch, snacks, everything else. So I hope that there's still interest in this and that you guys will all be a part of it if you want to. I think it's going to be really good. Once again, very highly participatory, small group work, so you really kind of get your hands dirty doing that. So thank you, Kareem. Glad you're excited about that. So And if you have experience like Cheryl writing one, even coming and sharing that experience or doing that another way would really be great. Also, next thing, the Top FSM Network Knowledge Sharing Meeting. That is January 27th and 28th. I hope you guys will consider coming. Right now we have 2 KM sessions, both that came directly from surveys that we did with the community. One, the one I'm most excited about, is we are doing one on failure. So come on, and Emily is one of the brave souls who's going to share her failure with you. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it, along with 2 other people. I hope to have a lot of fun with this session. We've got some really fun ideas, so I hope you come just to kind of see that one. The second one I've already kind of alluded to will be on kind of engaging and sustaining communities and what type of tools and methods you use for that one. That one we're still kind of shaking out a little bit, but it looks to be an interesting session with that. And Yejing, I believe you're going to be one of the presenters with that, or you just help developing it? See what she says here. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'll co-present. All right, Yejing. So you get to see some of your task force members too. Oh, and Julie. Oh, yeah, that's right. Julie is going, I'm sorry, Julie. Julie's going to have a table topic where she'll be unveiling the new KDAD site, so that's exciting. So lots of KMTF force members there. So, and also not to blow our horn, but Michelle Shapiro, she will be showing the FSN Network website, doing a table topic. And hopefully USA Learn will be there. So lots of stuff to kind of keep you engaged. Plus there's also other types of technical areas, you know, gender, resilience, theories of change, NDC, emergency programming, etc. So I hope to see you guys all there. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay. So I know we're ending a little bit early, but does anybody else have anything they would like to say very quickly? Contribute something that they're working on? Something. Remember, there's always the task force listserv. If you know you have an event or something, you want to go ahead and advertise it, please. I'm all about the learning and everything else like that. So, okay, all right. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. This is great. I think we've had some good conversation here. I want to remind you of your constitutional right to vote for the KM tool recommendation for the participatory facilitation technique workshop curriculum. And I also want to say that we will be having another workshop in January. We already tentatively have a guest lineup. I do not want to announce it in case that person can't come. But we'll see if we can get that person there. And also, please let me know. We will look into some of these things that you kind of suggested and see if we can develop meetings around that. And also, anybody who is ever willing to share on a topic, please let us know. So I see Cheryl typing in there, so we'll wait for her to go ahead and put that in there. And while she's doing that, I really want to thank the crew for doing this. Thank you, Cheryl, and for Yemisi, Adrian, and Lauren, who've been working, Lynette presenting, and all you guys for participating. So happy holidays. Happy 2016. Adrian, do you have something to say?
Yeah, just a reminder for the follow-up. Just in case you missed it, we will be including the links that were shared through the group chat, as well as the recommendation survey with the presentations and the recording.
And the notes.
We'll be all set.
Okay. Cool. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. I've enjoyed myself. I hope you have too.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes.